It's Thomas with Classic Electric again. I get a lot of calls about breakers tripping, so I wanted to go over the top 3 reasons that breakers trip. One of them is overloads. You have a 15 amp breaker and you're putting 16, 17, 18 amps on a 15 amp breaker and it trips. Another one is a ground fault breaker or even a ground fault outlet like what's right here. There's a lot of reasons that those can trip, and we're going to go over those. And then there's arc fault breakers that have come on in the last 20 years, and they're starting to get a little older now, and what those are for is detecting loose wiring. So we're going to talk about that. So let's get started. All right, so the most common one of the three is an overload situation. So what am I talking about? I got a 15 amp breaker and it's got 16, 17, 18 amps and the breaker opens. Or I got a 20 amp circuit, which is what we're going to test right here. And it's going to get to 21, 22, 23, depending on whether it's really cold outside or it's a warm day, depending. I mean, it's going to have a little fluctuation, but basically it's going to trip right where the indicator of the numbers are on the breaker. Like this one here is 15, 15, 15, 15. I got 20, I got 30, I got 40. That's what that's representing is amps. So for example, these are two 1500 watt each heaters that we're working with here. So we were just talking about amps and now we're talking about 1500 watts and then I got a 120 volt outlet and now I'm confused. Okay, it works like this. What I want to know is what the amperage is. Sometimes it's going to tell you right on here what the amps are. In this case, I think this heater says right on it it's 12.5 and I don't think that this one does. So how do you figure out what something's using and why do I even need to know all this? The most common call I get is, hey, I've got two heaters in my living room. And usually that's where I stop listening because you've already told me everything I need to know. But I got two heaters in the living room and the circuit's tripping and it's not holding and I think I got too much going on and, can you give me some advice? Well, when you told me you got two heaters, I know that this thing's pulling 12.5 amps and this is pulling 12.5 amps. 12.5 and 12.5 is 25 and it's probably on a living room circuit that's 15. So I already know that it's overloaded and I know what the problem is. So I'm going to show it to you in real time so you can actually see how this actually works. I've got a multimeter tool over here and I've got it turned to amps already. And I'm going to turn this thing on and you're going to see it in real time go up and I'm going to actually show you how the circuit breaker trips. So if it doesn't give it to you in amps, what I do is I take 1500 watts, I divide it by 120 volts, and that's going to give me my amperage. It's just a basics Ohm's law calculation that electricians know. And that answer is going to be 12.5 amps. So let me prove it to you in real time that this thing really does pull 12.5 amps. So watch this. So we're going to turn on this heater right here. This heater has a fan, it has a low, it has a medium, and a high. So the first thing I'm going to do for fun is we're going to turn it on to low, or I'm sorry, not low. We're going to turn it on to the fan. And it's going to pull 0.16 just with the fan running. No heat, just fan. Now we're going to go on ahead and turn it to low. By turning it to low, it's automatically shot up to 5 amps. Now, I already know which circuit breaker this is on because I've already got it clamped on this wire and I know it's attached to this breaker right here and it happens to be 20. So what this thing is telling me in real time right now is that on low, this particular heater is pulling 5 amps. So it is pulling 25% of the circuit just on low. Now let's go on ahead and kick it up to medium. I kicked it up to medium. Now we're running it's fluctuating a little bit, 7.6. Now we'll go all the way up to high, and in theory, it should be 12.5 because that's what the calculation is. So I lied. It's off by a little bit. It's 12.0. So we're pretty darn close to the actual math of the heater. At 1500 watts, it's pulling 12.5 amps. By our simple calculation, again, 1500 divided by 120 equals 12.5 amps, and you're seeing it in real time. Now, right now, you got to be thinking to yourself, I'm using 12 amps, and I've got it connected to a 20 amp circuit breaker in this particular application. A lot of people are calling me and they got it plugged into their living room or their family room and it's on a 15 amp breaker down here. Well, you're pretty much there now. Well, what do you think is going to happen if I go over to this one, I turn it on to high? Well, this one on high is 12. It's the same wattage as this one is here. I turn this one up, we're going to go right to 25. Well, geez, you're 10 over on a 15. You're going to be 5 over on a 20. So that's why when you call me on the phone, I automatically know that what we have going on is we have a situation where we're drawing too much power. And we'll go over the solution in a minute, but let's actually finish this for the fun of it. So we're at 12 amps. Now this particular heater has a fan, it has a low, and it has a high. It has no medium. So we're going to go right to here and we're going to turn on the fan. And as you saw on this one, it doesn't draw that much more. It barely even nudged. Now we're going to go on ahead and go low. Holy moly, now we're at 20. So you got a 20 amp circuit and it's drawing 19.3 on this particular circuit. So far we are good to go. If you had a genuine 20 amp circuit in your house and you were running these two, you could have this one on low and you could have this one on high, and as long as nothing else was on, you would barely be able to make this work. But right now, I'm going to go on ahead and push this thing just to show you what's going to happen if you call me on the phone and say, I got two heaters, it's cold, it's wintertime, you got on, and they're on the same circuit. What's going to happen? Watch this. Now we're jumped up to 22 and a half. So somewhere in here, depending on whether it's really hot or really cold outside, it's going to have a little fluctuation. This thing's going to trip. Sure enough, there it is. And you just saw the breaker trip. It went down to 0. These are off. And while we're at it, since you have a trip breaker, this is something else you can call me on the phone. Hey, I don't have power in my house. So while we're here and we're demonstrating this is a great example. We can use this while we're at it. This breaker here is now in the middle position. It's not all the way on and it's not all the way off. So if you ever have a trip situation because of an overload, you drew too much, what it's supposed to do is flip to the center, which is exactly what it did here. Now, if I try to take this and go to the on position, look what happens. It doesn't work. So in order to reset a breaker, should you ever have to reset, this is the correct way. You have to turn it off and then all the way the other way to on. And now our heaters are back on. So really quickly, before I trip that circuit breaker again, I'm going to turn those heaters off. So this is what happens when you have an overload type situation. So what did we learn? Well, if you want to fix this right, one way of doing it would be to run a brand new wire from here all the way over to where your heaters are and split the circuit so that you have a clean circuit, so you can have one circuit for the one and your existing circuit for the other. Another way to do it, you actually just saw me do this a minute ago. You could run one heater on low and run the other heater on low and you wouldn't have a problem at all. Because a minute ago we had one on high and we had one on low and it still held. So that's an option. Another option you could do is you could turn one up, get the room warm, turn it down to low. Grab the other one, turn it up on to high. Once it's warm, then turn it down to low, and then you can maintain heat. That's another way of doing it. Or if you've got a well-labeled panel, and I have a video on that, you can go watch my well-labeled panel video, how to label your panel correctly quickly. You might learn that your living room circuit is on one circuit and your family room is on another circuit. And if that's the case, plug the heater into one circuit and plug the other heater into the other circuit, and you're good to go. Or figure out if there's the living and the family room are on the same, but maybe the hallway is not, and then maybe you can get your heater. It comes with a 6-foot cord. Maybe you can plug it in there and you can get it into where you want. That's another way of doing it. But here's a couple of solutions to what happens if you draw too much power on your circuit breaker. So while I'm thinking about it, there's two other examples that are really similar to the heater situation. Another one is blow dryers, for your hair in the bathroom. If you ever look at the model number, like a 1960, it says right on there, what they're telling you is that's the wattage. So you're going to take that number, divide by 120 volts, and then you're going to get your amperage, and you're going to find that that thing's probably pulling 14, 15, 16, 17 amps, which is why on a new home today, you're going to have a dedicated circuit to your bathroom outlet specifically for this reason, because we've learned in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that the hair dryers weren't holding up, so they changed the code. Another one that's similar is if you take your hood vent above your stove in the kitchen, you got the little cute little hood vent, a little skinny little guy like this, and you take that out and you put a microwave in place. Well, it's the same scenario. You're cooking food, you're heating food. It's the same thing as the heater here and the hair dryer. You're supposed to have a dedicated circuit for your microwave if you've got it above the stove in there. So if you take the hood out and you put the microwave hood combination in, you're supposed to have a dedicated circuit. So again, you're going to go from here and run a dedicated circuit over. Otherwise, every time you start up the food, the lights and everything else that, that was on the old hood circuit trips the circuit for the same thing that we've got going on here. All right, now let's go on ahead and talk about the number 2 thing, which is GFCIs. Now, again, GFCIs can come in a couple of different scenarios. You can have a GFCI in here that's going to have a test button, and there it is there, or it's going to have the test button that's over here that you guys are used to. Those are GFCIs. What is a GFCI? It's a ground fault circuit interrupter. What is that? What the whole point of having a ground fault circuit interrupter is to protect people. That's it. That's all. So basically what's happening is it's recognizing that there's a nick in the cord or something is going wrong and it shuts down. So it is exclusively there to help people. Your GFCIs are going to be located in your garages, your washing machine, your laundry area. You're going to have 2 of them on your kitchen countertop. You're going to have them in your bathroom and anything that's outside. What do all those have in common? Water. So any area you got water, you're going to have one of these. I've been looking forward to doing this test because this actually isn't mine and now I can throw it away. I actually saved this. I had to go to a customer's house some years ago, and sure enough, this actually what was causing the whole doggone problem. She didn't have a wiring issue. She had a bad box fan issue. And then when it was all done, I said, "Can I have it?" And she's, "What do you want that for?" I said, "I want to put a video together one of these days showing exactly what happens so other people can." She thought it was hilarious, and I got to take her. So as soon as I'm done with this thing, it's going in the garbage. But let me give you a demonstration of what happens with a GFCI, and in this particular application, with a bad motor. So let me show, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about what's going on. So I'm going to go on ahead and turn this on, and every time you turn it on, it just immediately shuts off. So I can do this all day, and I can keep resetting. And over again, what ends up happening is it just keeps doing it, which makes for a really nice test when somebody calls me on the phone, for example, and says, and this is very common, I get this a lot, I have a water feature in my backyard and it's tripping the GFI. Okay, well, if it's tripping the GFI, usually it's because the pond pump is bad. And so I'm on the phone with them and I just say, okay, unplug the cord and do this simple test, which we're going to do right here. So I brought a extension cord over just for the fun of it that is not on a GFCI. And if I go on ahead and I plug this thing in, runs perfectly fine. It'll sit here and run all day. But if you plug it back into the GFCI over there, it's going to trip. Well, it's the same thing with the water feature. I tell them, okay, unplug the cord from the outlet that's out on a little post in the backyard. You got your little feature and it just plugs in. Unplug it and then walk over and reset your GFI. If your GFCI resets, well, you don't need me because the GFI is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Then if you take the faulty piece of equipment and go right back over here again and plug it in and turn it on and it immediately trips, what does that tell you? It tells you that the water feature, the motor, the little pond pump, which has a motor in it, same as this thing does, is starting to break down. And so what's happening is this thing has got such a sensitive element in it because it's to protect people. Well, what is it doing? Well, imagine if this cord had a nick in it and it was a little bit wet. This thing is sensing the amount of current going in and out of it. And if it isn't exactly the same going out as it is coming back, it assumes it's going to a person and then it trips it. That's what it's doing. But what's happening is the motor is breaking down and that thing can't tell whether it's me, the person, or the motor that's breaking down, so it shuts off. So I explained to them, you're going to need to replace your pump and your water feature, and that'll cure the problem. You don't need an actual electrician in that case because we've already proved the GFCI works because you've already reset it. And then every time you go to plug something in, it trips. So it's not the GFCI. The GFCI is doing its job. Another example would be like Christmas lights. Well, what happens at Christmas time? It's pouring down rain outside. So it's very common for somebody to tell me, hey, it's been dry the last few days and it's been working. And it starts raining again and then it trips. Well, what's happening? Well, the cord going out to the Christmas lights, either literally the cord or the actual Christmas lights themselves, they've been out, if they're older, they've been out in the sun, they're breaking down, there could be a nick in the insulation, hell, you roll them up, and throw them away or throw them in the box at the end of the year, and Christmas is over, and then you pull them back out. You only do that so many times, and then the GFI will trip. So, perfect example of what happens when GFIs start going. Sometimes it is legit that the GFCI quit. It doesn't take me very long to take the GFCI out and test. If I have power, yeah, the GFI is bad. But if I can reset it like we are here, but one of the best ways to test it is to actually walk over, unplug the item, and if it resets, you're good. But what happens sometimes is the GFI is here in the garage, but it also goes to the front outlet at the front of the house. It also goes to the one at the back. Well, if you still have a piece of equipment, a Christmas light, whatever, a water feature, whatever it is, that's plugged in over there, you keep resetting it here and it just keeps saying, and it just keeps popping and popping and popping. You got to go around to everything out there, unplug it, reset the GFI. Well, that's cool. It reset. And then if you go out and you plug something in, you don't need an electrician. It's whatever you're plugging in is the issue. And just really quickly for clarity, GFCIs come with a test button there, or like we did earlier, you can have a GFCI up here. So if I'm asking you, go find your GFCI somewhere and make sure that you've reset your GFCIs, you could be looking here, or you could be looking up here. And a lot of times, believe it or not, it's actually very common that somebody puts in a brand new cabinet or something large and it ends up right behind and you don't know it's there, and then you're pulling all your stuff out and you're like, oh, I had no idea there was a reset right there, because I'm usually telling you, the one with the test buttons. So be aware of where all these guys are, because I'm trying to save you a bunch of money, and I usually do this on the phone. I'm talking to people and I'm explaining to them where everything is, and I have a lot of reviews online that says, hey, help me on the phone, you never had to come out, because I don't want to come out and then hit somebody's reset button and charge them some money. Obviously that would be awful. So I hope that helps on GFCIs. Now let's talk about arc fault breakers. Okay, so I'm going to need a little imagination here, because I'm not going to be able to demo this too well on this outlet right over here, because you wouldn't see anything. So I had to kind of mock this up a little bit so I can give you a visual image of what's happening, because really nobody understands what an arc fault breaker is. And so for clarification, we're talking about ARC. And I'm going to show you one here in a minute with this demo. So you got to imagine this is actually over there, but I can't show it to you with the cover on. And obviously I'm not good enough to try to burn the house down and whatnot and try to get it to arc. And then the breaker's going to trip, so it's not going to burn the house down, which is a good thing. So just bear with me for a minute and use some imagination. So what I've got here is I got the heater we were playing with earlier, and we talked about it's drawing 12.5 amps. So I got a big load on this thing, and I'm doing it intentionally so I can get about as big an arc as I possibly can, so that you can hopefully see it on the camera. So I've got this on, I've got it turned all the way up. I am a professional, it goes without saying. Do not do this at home. This is only for visual aid only. So here's how this is going to work. In a newer home, and I'm going to give you the code because it seems like a good portion of the house: living room, family room, dining room, sunroom, this room, that room. There's all kinds of places now where basically it's the habitable areas of where you're going to be in the house. They want it to be an arc fault breaker. So the whole idea is that if anything goes wrong, the breaker is going to recognize it back over here, and then it's going to shut this thing off. That's the idea. So what happens is, in a normal situation, and yes, this is on, I do have gloves on, this is the real deal. If this is nice and tight, like I've got it here, I've got it pressed right up against it, everything's all good, the heater's on, it's blowing. Actually feels kind of good right at the moment. Anyway, as soon as I release from this thing, if I do it right, I'm going to get an arc on the side of this thing. And that's what that breaker in there is going to shut off in a moment. So what happens is, as I understand it, I think I read sometime that said that in an arc fault situation, if this gets hot enough, it can actually get 10 times hotter than the face of the sun. To which I think to myself, I wouldn't want to be on the face of the sun, let alone 10 times hotter than that. So you definitely, when you replace your switches, your outlets, your light fixtures, you want to make sure you got tight connections, because if you don't, and you don't have an arc fault breaker, which only came on for code about 20 years ago, which means if you got a 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, that sort of a thing, unless you've had an electrician come in, change out your panel and or add breakers and change them out, you don't have that. So it just slipped off and made an arc right there, and I didn't hear the breaker trip. But I bet if I play with this for a minute, that sucker's going to pop. There it went right there. You heard it. And it's this circuit breaker right here. And like we talked about earlier, it is in the middle position. And now I can feel a little better about myself not having a hot wire in my hands and doing this demonstration. Okay, so the whole point of arc fault breakers is to protect the structure from burning down. GFCIs with the test buttons were to protect people, period. Arc fault breakers are to protect the structure, which is exactly why you want to make sure you have nice tight connections, because the cause of most fires in homes are loose connections. And 10 times hotter than the face of the sun will definitely do that. I'd also like to bring something to your attention while we're at this. Use your imagination again, please. There are 3 pieces of blue tape. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to imagine there's 3 of these things. I'm going to come out of the electrical panel, I'm going to go right here, and then I'm going to go to right here, and then I'm going to go to right here. We're going to go to 1, then we're going to go to 2, and then we're going to go to 3. So for the sake of conversation, now we're going to take this imaginary outlet here of blue tape, and we're going to plug this heater into number 3. So you get this fallacy over the years that if I don't have anything plugged into an outlet, it won't cause a fire. Oh, yes, it will. And I'm going to explain to you why. The power comes out of the electrical panel to the first stop, to the second stop, to the third stop. If you take this heater and you plug it in to the third stop, and you have a loose connection here, or you have a loose connection here, you will have a fire here or here while this is plugged in right here. The power is being pulled through to this big heater, 12.5 amps. We've gone over that several times. It has to go through this one to get to this one to get to this one. So if this is loose, well, how did I get a fire there? There was nothing plugged in. Well, this is exactly how. So it's very important that if you have any loose connections or bad outlets or anything in the home, please get them changed out, because as you can see, this can be a very dangerous situation. Hopefully we've learned a couple of things today. We've gone over my most common phone calls that I get, and I've given you some troubleshooting things that will help move you forward. And I hope this was educational. And this is Thomas with Classic Electric, and this is a wrap.